Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ARH monthly partner call. We will get started momentarily. All right, Natasha, looks like we've got a good amount of folks who have joined up this afternoon. So you want to kick us off?
Sure thing. Thank you, Kim. Hello, everybody. Nice to have you join here in the Zoom space this afternoon. My name is Natasha Detweiler-Davy. I'm the Director of Affordable Rental Housing, she, her pronouns. And so this is our regularly scheduled monthly partner call. And so as we go into the call, mostly intending to kind of walk through our Housing Stability Council agenda for this Friday, and talk about, do a little bit of discussion on ORCA. We have a couple kind of program structure conversations that we'll be bringing to Housing Stability Council to acknowledge here as well. And then also thought we could kind of have some information around our agency request budget as we are kicking off that part of the legislative processes, um, and see what questions, curiosities folks have. And we can kind of take questions as we go. Sweet. Okay, so let's see. Our housing, we have our Housing Stability Council meeting this Friday. We start out with a series of transactions or funding recommendations. The first is for Hillside Park Building A and B is a 4% transaction, so we'll be bringing that for the conduit bond issuance approval. That happens pretty close to when that project does its financing close and begins construction. And then second, we have a slate of, I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 9 projects from our ORCA application. And so there will be 9 projects coming forward for approval, and that approval is based on kind of the early policy aligned review coming out of the impact assessment. And I think as we are seeing the scale of projects coming through that, we are also identifying, and I think we began talking with folks a little bit about this as we saw this last week at the Housing Oregon conference, but the scale of resources being held now to projects in the Western region fully subscribes that resource. So we are implementing and kicking off our waitlist process for the regions where they become oversubscribed. And Roberto is here as well to be able to speak a little bit more about that with me for where there are questions. We are actively working on a technical advisory that should go out as soon as this afternoon, but if not, probably tomorrow, that provides more details and information about the waitlist approach, and as well as the volume of projects that we are seeing now in the ORCA, as I know that folks have been interested. So Roberto and team have a lot of folks have prepared a bunch of information to be able to share through that advisory, including the waitlist process and policy. I think conceptually, this is I think we should consider this a success. The idea is that as we have fully subscribed the resources that we had to make available for that region, we are beginning the wait list. So as resources become available, we can begin pulling in order from that list, and would be ensuring that we are able to publish an update to that list on a monthly basis. And again, we'll be sending out that advisory with a lot more detail around all of that. But Roberto, anything at this moment that you think would be helpful or interesting to flag for folks?
No, just to reemphasize, I mean, so we have 8 projects being recommended this time. And that with those already recommended in previous months, I mean, that puts us pretty close to, or is going to put us close to $200 million for the Western region side, set aside. And that, I mean, exceeds some of what we had designated in the ORCA framework. Therefore, the waitlist policy, how we are going to treat any other applications that are either in review or are at impact assessment. And so we are detailing in that technical advisory that we're hoping by the end of the day we can put it out. Though I think many probably were got a preview of it at the Housing Oregon conference. We haven't changed really much from the concept of a wait list that we presented then. Um, and there's still several from the Western region, several that are impact review. I believe there's probably 14 applications that are in actual review. And so that again puts us pretty much way above of the resources that we have. Along with the TA, we'll be sharing, or you'll have access to a link that will give an overview of the applications and where they are in the process. And that should give an indication of what's coming for us in the pipeline and where some of the applications are. In that statistics, you should be able to see again projects by region, the city and the region, the amount of funding requested, where they are, whether they've been to Housing Stability Council, whether they are in the financial feasibility now or eligibility now, and so on. So I think after we publish the information, I'm sure there'll be questions. We'd be more than happy to answer any that you may have.
I just wanted to make note that there was a question in the chat about the regions. So I am sharing my screen to show you the ORCA regions, and I'll put this link in the chat as well.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, so I think again, most of the projects, most of the applications, yeah, are coming from the Western region. There's some in the Eastern and some, not many, from the Metro region as well. But again, I think that wait list should give us an indication of how and when can we proceed with applications. It's really that subject to availability of funding for some of the regions that get to full subscription. And we're working, and I think one of the other topics here today is about our agency request budget that I think can help us in the future, but probably not right away.
Absolutely. And I see in the chat, it seems like the full Housing Stability Council meeting packet is not currently uploading and showing. It kind of gives a login message. So we'll get in touch with those that post it and make sure that it gets up there. The agenda itself is on the Housing Stability Council webpage, but again, it's the deeper packet that shows all of the project write-ups, and so that does exist. It'll, I'm sure, get updated. But yeah, so we have first up for affordable rental housing are the transactions, and ORCA, and let's see, and I see a question from Shauna in there around how does this tie to the rural set aside? So in the ORCA, there's a 25% set aside for culturally specific organizations and rural and nonprofit. So that is not the state region. So that 25% set aside is still in place and still has resources. It is then below, underneath that, there are 3 regions: Western, Eastern, and Metro. And that is where we have the full subscription. So as that wait list is developed from the projects that have qualified through the review from the impact assessment, will kind of retain ability as resources become available that can meet a set aside that project falls under would be able to fund it. Pre-development funding, Roberto, I think we have not fully spent our pre-development resources, but I believe there's applications under review is my
I believe so, but I think we're gonna ping Mitch if he knew more about it. But we are, yeah, we just had a new staff added to to our team. So I think we are working through that. But as far as I know, we haven't depleted or deployed all of the pre-development funding.
Yeah, I'll let Fatima give more detail on specific projects, and I'd recommend or suggest like kind of sending messages through the work centers if you are waiting for us to respond. But I know we're actively working with DOJ on some of the legal docs for that program, and yeah, are moving forward, which is exciting.
All right, and then there is another question, a couple questions in the chat. How much in lift is being recommended reserved for the 9 projects on Friday?
Roberta, would you mind looking that up? I thought maybe I can screen share. This will be included in your advisory that goes out. This is not the actual screen, but I think this is the overall, oops. I've lost you all. Okay. I think, are you seeing my screen with my Word document right now?
Yes.
Okay. Why Zoom and Teams are different and weird in very specific ways. So I think that's the status of the regions. Here, this I should, well, it's not gonna.
And we anticipate that this technical advisory will be sent out either later today or early tomorrow, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And Natasha, this includes what's going to Housing Stability Council this month, correct?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that is assuming that the Housing Stability Council approves the recommendations that we'll be
Yep.
bringing on Friday.
Thanks.
Okay, and then another question about the dashboard, more information and more updates for that about project progress and timelines.
Yeah, so the intent is that when that advisory is sent out, all of the information will be updated across so the dashboard will be updated. We'll have another reference document with kind of a broader monthly update, a policy document on the waitlist policy, and then an overview of the current status of resources. So I think there will be a lot of information in there. Projects that are, I see other questions in there. So I think that's to Sarah's question on the dashboard. To Robin's question, I think that, as we have projects being able to move through impact assessment and be determined to have met the standards, those will be projects that can remain on the wait list. Again, within the limitations, we're retaining a 2-project priority to ensure that both the projects are the ones that you as organizations are prioritizing. And also so that as we are able to have resources that can meet the needs of a project on the wait list, we'll be able to have some parameters for when we reach out, are you ready to move forward, and get that agreement in place. So Travis's question around overlapping, conflicting scenarios between set aside and different funding resources. I mean, I think we are we are considering it, and I think that is something that I know that we are paying attention to, again, trying to have these set-asides be over all of them. We realize that there's some places where that is, you know, if there's a type of project that financing that moves slower or faster, that might be a place where we need to revise our policies moving into next year. But at this point, we don't have any, and so are really wanting to identify where there are projects that meet the available resources that we have, and retain our overall perspective as we put out. And so I think you know, it'll be a learning process as we move forward, but ideally trying to test this version out. I think Robin, I see the CSO question. I think I just screen shared that set aside.
Hey, Natasha, can I just
Yeah.
clarify what you said there? So if I'm tracking correctly, you are saying that if a particular resource is undersubscribed, but a region is oversubscribed or fully subscribed, at this point in time, you'll take a wait and see approach to see how you would make those resources available.
Yeah, I think just for, I mean, at this point, because I know that we have, this is, you know, this month's Orca projects, we have another wave of those that are being, you know, having the reviews finalized for November's meeting, and I can't believe how fast this year is rounding out. And so thinking that we are at the place of needing to add tax credits, that provides some new opportunity for projects. We're at the place of being able to add additional gap resources that are, we have 120 million in lift resources that are being held for 2025, hoping that we can be leveraging those to a large extent. And so I think there, where we're looking at all of the different pieces of resources out and what are the projects that they could fit, that is, yeah, I think we're wanting to have the process, you know, close out the next month or so, and then identify where do we need to make some updates or refinements into 2025. I think the culturally specific organization set aside will be held. That rural culturally specific organization set aside will be held. The regions were you know, cast out for this year with the idea that we need to now roll them into, with the tax credits, all of next year. And so that's our approach at this point. And I think where we have projects that meet that other thing and they're on that wait list, we'll be able, you know, to that, at that point, dig in. So I don't think that, I don't want to be saying to anything, if you don't have, if it's a different kind of deal, don't do it, like, don't move it forward, do it, move it forward, and kind of get that information and kind of queued up to make sure that we are able to access it as we find resources that can fit. Okay, so let's see. I see Richard's question on debriefs. I think you are welcome to reach out to the application team or the advisor team whenever you have questions or concerns. Again, the not funded this time is a timing question. It's not you know, the evaluation of against the standards. It's not, again, trying to pick it's not picking a cohort that gets the resources versus those that are not. It's just, it's the order of it, and it's when you've completed your full application. So I think encourage anybody with questions to reach out at large. I mean, probably to the application team if it's on a specific application, and they can pull the right folks together. Let's see, on the, if the project is on a waiting list, is it still considered an impact assessment? So it will, if it's on a project on the waiting list, gets there by moving through impact assessment and having been evaluated against the standards in the impact assessment. So yes, it is on the wait list coming out of impact assessment. I think, and then Steve, let's see, can a project, a wait list be allowed to restructure financing based on funds being allocated next year, including tax credits and lower lift subsidies? I think you are able to recast, once the application is open to those that are designing their project to be able to use lift with fours, then you would be able to kind of have your project resubmitted with that cohort. You wouldn't, I presume, I mean, I think that's probably a detail we need to be crisp about for that opening process, meaning having your impact assessment having already been evaluated is surely helpful, but it's not giving you a head start over those that have been waiting in intake for that opening to happen.
Doing a good job getting through the questions. There is
Yeah.
kind of a clarifying question from Joanna here about number of projects and the Orca stages and the wait list.
So
the
I think the
interaction-
answer is yes. I mean, so I think it's if you have a project that you're able to move forward with resources that we still have available first, then I think you would want to do that versus hold your spot on the waiting list. But I think would need, figure out how to get some, curious for impacts of that. And I think, and maybe Roberto, that's a kind of pipeline assessment.
Right, it could be, but yes, it would count. But you could also swap, so you could take one project out of the wait list if there's another one that you want to bring forward. But otherwise, yes, on the wait list, we're counting the 2 projects per impact assessment or any of the stages, but definitely impact assessment. On the question about how much lift is being recommended, not all 9 projects are lift. Some are using or being recommended for VHE-HAP. But anyway, it's about over $106 million in lift resources if council approved them with lift resources.
Okay. Let's see. I'll take a couple more questions. I see Seth. So there are still resources in the culturally specific organization rural set aside. So if there are projects that meet that set aside, you'd be eligible for resources. So it doesn't need, because the resources are first come from the regions, and then when the regions are fully subscribed, they come from the set aside. So that is where that still stands. And then Robin, so imagine you have a project and impact that is waitlisted, so it can change to 4% when the time comes. Does it project go to the back of the list? So I think the nuance there that I think is that we haven't allowed, so projects that are in intake that indicated that they are structured with 4% tax credits, which we haven't been offered, have not been provided their work centers to be able to fill their application out. So there are not, so I think saying that you would be stepping out of your wait list from the gap only to initiate that. Anyway, I think we'll need to maybe consider that in the world of QAP feedback, because I think we need to solve that. And so I think I would be curious for where you think it should and should not have impact on the waitlist. And I think I could imagine a bunch of scenarios. I think the specific iteration of this is requiring us to open this for the first time. And that has some differences and distinctions than probably in the future where it is maybe more open rolling for anybody who has resources that can fit the projects that can fit the resources that we have. So I think Robin, we need to incorporate something a little bit specific to that in our QAP kind of ORCA alignment of the tax credit programs. And so any feedback in our process with the QAP, I would really be interested for all of your thoughts. Great. Okay, so an exciting technical advisory is coming up soon, either later today or tomorrow, with a bunch more of that detail. Presumably our Housing Stability Council packet, the full packet, will get published sooner rather than later, so you can see all of the amazing projects that are coming forward. And we'll see more and more to come, which is really exciting. I also want to encourage us to feel the power of all of these ready projects on our list that we can be talking about and sharing with our elected officials in the legislature around the impact that this work will have with additional investment. And so I think, again, in a minute, I'll touch back to the agency request budget. I think in that same spirit of opportunities to be able to support the broad production that Oregon needs. Yeah, so I think it's all just incredible stuff you got. Okay, so before we move over to that, I think we still have a couple. So on our Housing Stability Council agenda after these transactions, we have an introduction discussion around our new middle income revolving loan program. This was, and I think I have Rick here to be able to chat a little bit more about this. And then we have a couple other items as well. So maybe Rick, I'll mute myself and you can kick off on that one.
Yeah, I actually might reorder a little bit, but thank you. Rick Ruzicka, Assistant Director of Planning and Policy. Planning and Policy is responsible, amongst other things, to stand up new programs when they come from the legislature. We're still wrapping some of those up from previous sessions. So I'm going to kind of update two that are on the Housing Stability Council agenda. The third one being, just kind of wanted to throw out there that we did open the Push Sellers Tax Credit Program this month. So that is something that's now available. There was a TA sent out on that. But if you are interested in purchasing a property that's a part of our push system, where the program or the property has expiring affordability restrictions, you may be eligible for tax credit to help with the purchase of that, or that could go to the seller to hopefully lower the price that you would have to pay to purchase that property. And that is the new program around the Push Sellers Tax Credit. There's a $3 million annual limit on that for those tax credits, but it is open. It is open now. The other two programs that we're presenting to council, one of them was part of Senate Bill 1530. It appropriated $1 million to Seating Justice, which is specifically for tenant education and to provide support for residents whose housing may be withdrawn from publicly supported housing or is within a manufactured dwelling park being sold or closed. We're in the process of working with Seating Justice around a scope of work and a contract. And the presentation on Friday is really just to outline the legislation for the council, let them know where we're at in the process, and to let them know that we anticipate that contract will be issued with Seating Justice in the coming few months, and that money will get to them definitely before the end of the fiscal year. The last program that we'll be presenting is around the moderate income housing program. This is a revolving loan program and was specific to SB 1537, which came out of the 2024 legislative session. That was a very packed bill. This particular portion of the bill was deemed the Housing Project Revolving Loan Fund. We added the moderate income revolving loan program, so added a few acronyms in there to make it specific, because it is specific to moderate income, 120% AMI type of developments. The way the program works, and I'm going to try to be really brief, is that this is a loan that we would provide to cities or counties, a sponsoring jurisdiction. If the city or county decided to utilize the fund, the city or county could then potentially utilize that loan to issue a grant to a developer. That grant that the developer receives would be upfront money that would help them with the development. And basically, this is kind of a TIF program where the improvements on the taxes from the undeveloped land to the developed land would be calculated, and that's based upon that calculation over a 10-year period is what that grant limitation is based upon. Instead of paying those taxes over the next 10 years after the project is developed, those payments actually go out as fees instead of taxes. So the taxes are exempt, but you have to, the developer will have to pay a fee structure that would in essence equate to those taxes. Those fees are paid to the sponsoring jurisdiction, who then utilizes those fee payments to pay back the loan to Oregon Housing and Community Services. And that is the revolving nature of the fund. And then once those funds are reintroduced to OHCS, we would repurpose them for a new loan. There's $75 million in that account. We are working on standing that program up. What we are presenting to council is basically the framework of the program, the initial draft framework. We're still in the engagement process. We've been talking with folks. We will have a kind of an open engagement on October 22nd. I believe that's from 2 to 3:30. There will be a technical advisory that goes out on that as we continue to refine the framework. And I think we're looking at hopefully finalizing the program in either December or January at council, with the hope, the aim to open the program in February. So that is the moderate income revolving loan program. Happy to answer any questions on any of that.
Great. Any questions on either of those? Well, very different things. Great. Yeah, and so I think that mostly rounds out our Housing Stability Council conversation. We will also be just having discussion again, kind of furthering our conversation with them around incorporating the tax credits into ORCA. And I know I just wanted to take the moment to thank everybody who came out to have our QAP discussion with us last week at Housing Oregon. I also wanted to thank everybody who was part of pulling off the Housing Oregon conference. Housing Oregon, I know a lot of you, a lot of OHCS staff, but a lot of really great sessions, have really appreciated the team being able to pull it off. Yes, Kevin, thank you so much for, again, all of the work around that. It was really nice to be able to be in person and to see everybody and have that discussion. So I think that's mostly the version of work that we'll be talking with Housing Stability Council on, again, wanting to get your information and your thoughts. Looking forward to continuing our engagement in the next few weeks. Okay, so I think maybe we transition over to our agency request budget. And so I think Tanisha will come on the screen. And so I think just as a, you know, the machine of session, these are my words, has kicked off. It starts with the agencies requesting resources that we believe kind of meet a need, and we have strategies around supporting the work. So we have put together what is called our agency request budget. The next piece that happens is the governor has a recommended budget. That information is then goes into legislative session where there will be bills, there will be legislators and stakeholders, and so many bills swirling. And so none of these are final around what is actually going to be a bill or what will be presented, but this is the information we have. And so I think Tanisha is screen sharing a presentation that OHCS Director Bell did last week. Is this the one from last week, Tanisha?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want here? I'll hand it off to you for a minute if you'd like to, and we can just tag team.
Perfect. So as Natasha was saying, this is our agency request budget. It is the initial numbers that we say we can use and allocate and do things with. So this is the big number that we're like, yep, we can take this amount of money and put it to good work, and we can do certain things with it, and it's laid out in our ARB. What this is not is a promise of what the numbers will look like at the end. The next step is the governor's recommended budget that comes out in December. Keep an eye out for that. That will be the strongest push to what the actual dollar amounts could look like. And then at that point, then that will go before the legislature. That will be in front of the Ways and Means Committee. And the Ways and Means Committee will take all of this information and all of the information that you as partners tell them. And they will take the GRB, they'll glance at the ARB, and they'll take what you say and build their own budget. And that's going to be the legislatively adopted budget. And so, big picture, this is what we're hoping we can do things with. They're big numbers. And we also know that the revenue forecast this year did not come with as much big number energy as our ARB did. So we'll tag team a little bit. So the first half of the affordable rental housing side of the ARB is relating to increasing the stock of housing. And so what we were told is what programs have worked, continue funding those, and what programs have worked in the past do we need to bring back, and what do we need to expand a little bit further. So in that vein, we have the first one, which is increased housing production, and we're doing that for the affordable rental housing development and the permanent supportive housing development. These are our 11Q bond asks. We're asking for $500 million. This is LIFT dollars for the affordable rental housing side. And then we're doing $80 million of LIFT for PSH. So in total, that first bullet, we're asking for $580 million of Article 11Q bonds. The next set of numbers, so that's the big ask. We're expanding a lot of the programs that y'all have been a part of in the past, and some of y'all have been recipients from. So we're expanding the land acquisition program. So we out there and are coming back and cycling in and being spent again. We're going to ask for, hold on, I just lost my notes. $20 million to expand the land acquisition program. We're going to expand the pre-development program, as you all know, and we've asked some questions about it. We have 9.7 from the 2023 legislative session. We are asking for $15 million additional dollars for the pre-development program. In addition to that, we're asking to expand co-location of affordable rental housing and early care and education, the CARE program. This was from 2021 legislative sessions. We're bringing that back, and we're asking for an additional $10 million with that program. And then culturally responsive property management is something that we've heard is a need, and we know there's a need out there. So we're asking for $3 million for that. We want to expand PSH rent assistance and services. And so we're asking for $13.9 million to expand that. And then lastly, we want to increase resources for supportive housing and behavioral health resources in PSH, the permanent supportive housing. And we're asking for $8.8 million with that. So that was a lot of numbers. Eventually, there will be a one-pager, a cheat sheet that will be sent out I don't have permission to share it yet. There's still some reviewing of some verbiage in there, but it's coming, so you'll have it all. But it's also in our ARB, which when I'm done talking, I'll link to that document as well. But as you can see, lots of big asks for our increasing the housing stock. Natasha, do you have any 2 cents to add, or should I dive into preservation?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could talk for days on these items.
Yes,
I do
we could.
think that these are in the largely continuing investments with where we are. I think expanding PSH rent assistance and services is intended to expand our current permanent supportive housing initiative focused on chronic homeless, alignment with our CSH Supportive Housing Institute. And then the increased resources for supportive housing and behavioral health resources is an effort that we are intending to drive forward in collaboration with our housing stability division within OHCS to work in concert with advisory teams galore, OHA, inclusive, with the understanding that it is not only chronic homeless populations that really require and supportive housing to be to have the tools that they need in their homes, and so finding ways to be able to do other priority populations and other needs there. And so I think there is kind of continuing and expanding our permanent supportive housing request does include an update to our current program design to be able to updated to be 15,000 per unit per year for services and 80% AMIs for rents. And so I think that has been documented in terms of the need from lots of research groups, including that which OHCS has done. But so we are intending to be able to incorporate some of those updates. I think not on this list, though still existing, I don't know, is it on the next one, Tisha? The, requesting resources to be able to continue our PSH risk mitigation fund. That effort is getting launched right now. I don't know that we're going to need the spend down of the initial investment may get us through, but again, we're wanting to ensure that resource and that offering can continue through into the future. And I think as part of overall insurance costs requests, I think there's we know a lot about the impact that is having on projects, and we've done a lot of work groups and surveys. Thank you all. I think the solutions are a lot more like a set of tools, and we are doing some deliberate work with insurance regulators and others to identify what potential solvency or impact we can have from the state around that. But yeah, I think that mostly is the overall of the investing and increasing the stock of the new. And then Tanisha just flipped to the second slide here, which is about preserving and reinvesting in our current portfolio, which has a combination of strategies here. So I'll hand it to you, Tanisha.
Perfect. So I'll dive into the dollar amounts per preservation. As many of you know, the governor's office has a housing production framework. In that framework is also retaining our current housing stock. It's really important to the governor and her team that we preserve as much as we can. And so our ARB is for preservation is structured in such a way. So there's also big numbers here. So on the preserving the rent restricted housing side, we have a $350 million ask. This would be a lottery revenue bond ask if you like to get in the weeds. In addition to that, we have an organizational support and system improvements ask, and that's going to be $64 million for the organizational relief and better forecasting of our state preservation need. And then also we have
I'm in the sun and I have a sweater on.
$25 million ask to preserve manufactured parks that are at risk of losing their affordability. And then, as Natasha mentioned earlier, we have and ask for offset of insurance costs. So that's expanding our PSH program in some strategic ways. And that's going to be $10 million to support that. And then, as she said, there we are be on the lookout for a legislative concept that could go further. That's not just from OHCS, but from some other agencies, to see what we can do as a whole team to try to address this issue. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of that is, I was going to say straightforward. It's not straightforward. These are all hard work on all sides. But I think I think if we look at the better forecasting of the state's preservation need and the organizational resources, I think within that policy option package requests that we put together, it is looking at a combination of ways so that we can better understand the state's preservation needs. So what is the status? We have really great data, or the best data we've ever had on risk of loss from expirations. And I think that is a significant part of the story, but we know that is not it. We know that both struggling physical and financial condition are require significant investment, and it is also really challenging to be able to tell that story and really understand how we can really forecast what the need is. So within there, we have organizational resources of a strategy that is similar to one that was used, I believe, in Minnesota, where it's looking at our the housing providers who are to be able to do, trying to remember what the housing organization, program, to be able to recognize and provide resources to offset the impact of continued work to prioritize housing stability and safety for your residents as you navigate through incredibly challenging times where you have rapidly increasing costs and against challenging rent collections and stagnant rent increases. We also have in there a concept around tenant rent protection account, with the idea acknowledging that our rent increases are capped by the state now, and in particular around the policies that OHCS has implemented in response to tenant needs to be able to have additional scrutiny over increases above 5% or higher. And so that tenant protection account concept is intended to allow projects to realize the higher rents, but allow tenants to experience the smaller regular rent increase approach to get them up to that point of paying the full rents. And so again, strategies within there, resources to support, asset management, and others are all part of what is being considered in that organizational support and system improvements. So yeah, and then I think Tanisha covered the insurance costs, which I think is the other kind of big. Yeah,
We
so
do have
a
question in the chat about that.
Yeah.
So either you or Tanisha can take that.
Mary, just to clarify, you're asking about the ARB future request. So, or at least that's what we're going to assume. Natasha, correct me, it is extended to the very low income or affordable housing properties, but not necessarily just PSH for the ARB.
Yeah. So our current permanent supportive housing risk mitigation fund is explicitly for our permanent supportive housing qualified units, eligible units. The concept that we have put forward for our policy option package would expand to some version of a first loss risk pool for all affordable housing. I think it would probably be leverage similar approaches. It would be a separate effort, again, wanting to ensure that I think the PSH portion of that being probably a little bit different than the nuance of the the whole portfolio. Any questions?
Robin, you might already have had this answered, but there is currently not a legislative bill number. This number will get assigned when our budget bill is created around February-ish of session. So around February or March, we'll be able to say what our budget number bill is. And then that way, would be the number, that would be the bill that would have these dollar amounts in it. So I will get back to you at that date.
Yeah, and when we are doing those budget bills, Tanisha, it's based on the governor's recommended budget versus the agency request.
It starts off like in pencil with the governor's recommended budget, and then the legislature writes in pen essentially what they actually want.
I like the visual, yes. Yeah, so again, these are the ideas that we put forward, feeling like they would have significant support, but also be of impact and in alignment with the work that we believe that we can take on. And that always evolves as we go through session, what that needs to be, as others will also have their great ideas to be considered. Any other questions? I know this was a lot, and we have some upcoming technical advisories that will be sent out with some more detail, especially on the ORCA side. And I did see there was a question which will from Richard around the reimbursement policies. So we will make sure that we have answer ready for that. Okay. Well, I think with that, maybe we will close this month's partner call. Thank you all very much for being here, engaging today, but also for all of the work that you do on a daily basis. Appreciate it. Thank you.